Aha!
Hi Randy, again. Sorry about the delay in getting this video out there. Unfortunately, COVID gets in the way at home and here at work as well. I'm actually here on my own at the moment because all my staff have got COVID, which yeah, a bit weird. But enough about that. Let's talk about where we've got to on the Mini. I've kind of jumped the gun again, I think, as you're doing in a lot of these videos, where you get a little bit carried away and you forget to record things. So I'm just going to give you a brief sort of run over at what I've done so far. As you probably know, from the A post all the way back to the valance, I cut out and temporarily fixed into position all the panels with tech screws. So I'm talking about the outer sills, the doorstep, this rear quarter, companion bins, heel board, bench seat, boot floor, both wheel arches, the valance, and literally all the reinforcing brackets that go with that. So all these panels, Randy, have been assembled together, held together with tech screws, as you know, my favourite item. And once I was convinced that all the panels were in the correct position, bearing in mind that every panel position has to relate to the adjacent panel, I thought that was quite important. I didn't want to start welding things together, move on to the next panel, and then realise how I could do with a few mil here and a few mil there and make my life difficult. So it was a dry run, a pre-assembly. I was confident the shell wasn't going to move around. The jig is pretty robust. It's got a lot of fixing positions on the jig. I cross braced internally by welding some sort of struts in position to stop the thing from twisting. What'll be an interesting video is when I come to fit the subframe. I have dimensionally checked it, but what I've noticed is that when these shells are upside down on a jig, they tend to flex, they tend to bow, or the floor, as in this position here, is at the top, so the shell's upside down, will compress. It's almost arching its back, and I can tell that's happening just by its relationship to the long tube which runs through the middle. I can see that the thing is compressing. So I have noticed on other videos that people have posted that it doesn't leave them enough room to get the subframe in. It's like the mounting bolt positions are too close together. And what I've found is that if you flip the shell over, take that compression away from the floor, it tends to open the shell back up to its natural position, and all the holes line up. I'm not going to say that happens in all instances, but it's something I have noticed. I don't think it matters how much you try and brace these shells or have a super mega jig attachment. I think you're always going to get this deflection, so you need to bear that in mind when you come to position the subframe. Because really, at the end of the day, these panels haven't got that much room to move about. You know, you've only got so much room to play with and squash all these panels in, but just a tip anyway. So it was all assembled, all tech screwed together. I then took it all apart, all the tech screws out, every panel back on the bench. I then prepped every panel, and what I mean by that is I keyed the painting, so doing it on the car. I welded up all the drain holes in the floor and in the boot and in the bench seat, just like you did on your video. I also welded on any brackets that I felt would be better welded on with good access, so I welded them on as best I could with a spot welder, or I MIG'd them on, just to get them in position, just to save a job with my, you know, I didn't want to be stooped over with my head in the boot or hanging upside down and welding above my head. And so anything I could have done on the bench I did before I then came back with the panels and decided which order I was going to start welding these on. At some point I had to weld something on the car. What I did first was the wheel arches. They went in one at a time, obviously there to maintain the jig support as best I could. So one in welded, disattached the other side, the other one in welded. That then maintained the jig and the robustness of the connection between the shell and the jig. I then welded in the heel board, obviously screwed all the tech screws back in temporarily to get everything relocated, spot welded, plug welded, anywhere I could, and that heel board really stiffened things up, as you can imagine. I then put in the little closing panels. I welded those in, just went for it, welded them to the arches, welded them to the heel board, and then that left me a gap. It left me a gap between the two arches to slide the boot, floor, bench seat back in, so the whole floor panel, rear floor panel, slid in between the arches under the heel board and popped itself in to the inside. A bit tight, but it slid in and it fitted all together quite nicely. Everything seemed to line up, which it should do because it's already been assembled before. And then once I'd got it back in position, tech screws back in temporarily, I just had a big welding run. So yeah, boot floor's now in, little closing panels are now in, the arches are in, and the rear heel board is in. We've got lots of little brackets welded on there now. All the brackets connecting things together have been plug welded, I've seam welded around the edges of the brackets as best I can. There was some clamping up needed doing. I used a few nuts and bolts to really ratchet some areas together, like the rear bench of the seat against some of the brackets and the boot floor, just to kind of crush these things together. I found the tech screws in some instances weren't pulling things close enough together, because probably been in and out about 10 times. So yeah, anything I could do to cram these panels together to make the welds a bit more in contact, that's what I did. And that's where we are at the moment with it. After that, and you'll see in the next part of the video, is I moved on to the outer sills, the accompanying brackets which are in there. Learned a little bit about those brackets and where they went, not quite sure what some of them did. Then on to the doorstep, but you'll see that in the video coming up. The next video I plan to do will be for the remaining panels, which will be the companion bins, the rear valance, and that should really be the back end done. I've got all my door posts sorted now, and yeah, I'm quite happy with it. What What I did want to mention to you was these discs, which you mentioned in your video, where I don't know, I must have used about, God, I don't know, 15, 20 of them. There's holes all over the place. But battery box, front floor pans, rear floor pans, boot floor, bench seat, they've all got these generally 25mm diameter holes where the rubber bungs go in. There's a few smaller ones which I've had to make up some little discs myself to close off as many holes as I can. I've welded shut all the little holes and things in the battery box. I've left a few access holes into the rear valance closing panels to maybe spray some oil in at a later stage, some cavity wax, just so I've got a bit of access. But the best way I've found of doing these discs is obviously make sure the disc is cleaned up, make sure it's steel for a start and not stainless or anything like that. Clean it up. I've attached it with a magnet on the back. That tends to keep it quite flush and attached. Make sure the perimeter area metal around is clean and fresh. And as you can see there, that if this was prepped for being welded closed, I don't think I'm going to weld this closed because it's hidden underneath the bench seat, but I've noticed a slight issue is if you've got like a crescent gap all the way around there, you can see a slither of light all the way around, and the car's earthed. It's possible that the disc itself isn't earthed when you come to strike your MIG torch against it. So I cleaned up took the paint off the magnet to try and get that disc properly earthed. Because I think if you didn't do that and you struck your wire off the disc, just before it starts to weld, it can fire back at you and blow off, and you can blow a hole in the edge and things like that, and then you're fighting a losing battle as soon as you start getting a hole in there. So being very careful is I did around the clock little spot welds as I went round and did little bits at a time. I was very careful when I was welding on the edge of the main panel, because of trying to get the heat to disperse on the edge of a piece of steel. Obviously if you're striking your torch off an edge of a piece of steel, there's less area for the heat to sort of escape and spread out. And I think the metal around some of these holes as well is a little bit thinner. I don't know whether that's due to it being stamped out or something, I don't know. But yeah, make sure it's clean, make sure it's earthed, magnet on the back, and take your time, little short spurts. Come off the thicker bit of metal if you can and just flick it across, stop, flick it across, stop, flick it across. It doesn't take much, you're talking microseconds. And I really didn't have any problems with that. So I'll detach the camera, just give you a quick show of where the boot floor bench seat is at the moment, and then it'll move on to the rest of the video. So heel board in. It's been spot welded all along this outer edge here. I am going to do a few runs of MIG weld along there as well, but it's also been welded, plug welded rather, on the inside as well. So there are 2 runs of plug welds there. These little closing panels are in there now. These have been welded along there. There's some welds on the inside as well, but I'm going to finish off these runs of weld wherever I can. Start firing some MIG wire in there. You can see the run of welds underneath the rear bench seat back, the bit that you lean against. You can see the battery box. I've welded up all these little holes which I suppose can let water in. I never want it to really try and have any water in there to let out, but 3 holes there with the discs all in. The valance closing panels, they were welded on while the boot floor was on the bench, as I mentioned earlier. Little battery earth connecting piece. That's there for, I've still got a weld on the spare wheel clamping bracket. But as you can see, that's been welded all the way across. I also converted the dual fuel pipe hole, massive hole for the injection models, to better reflect the single fuel pipe and fuel tank breather pipe. So I don't think you can get these boot floors in the Mark III version for carburettor cars. There was some modifications needed doing to the shape of the rear heel board due to that area there where the fuel pipes and things come down. It seems to be wider there on the injection models, possibly for getting more pipes up, not sure. So the floor pan needed some modification in that area to deal with that recess, the wider recess. So there's a couple of modifications done there, and like I say, hopefully these subframe mounting positions, I'll do a video on how the subframe fits. Left some of these open, but yeah, all in. Just quickly run you round to the underside. A bit dark, but support brackets in, plug welded and welded along the edge as best I can. Same the other side, same there. What else we got? Fuel tank bracket. There is supposed to be a fuel tank support stand, which is, I've been looking at the photos, somewhere along here to support the fuel tank, but I'm of the opinion that that is for just Mark 1 and 2 mini shells. I don't think it's designed for the shells with the larger fuel tanks, sort of Mark 3 onwards. But yeah, everything's looking good. Bench seat support, plug welded on, runner welds along there, closing panel on the inside ready for the companion bins. So yeah, that area, happy with it. Just got to get my head down and get some more welding done on it. And there's the repair I did to the rear bench that somebody kindly cut out, and the super thin metal of the rear bench upstand welded on. So yeah, all good.